Dust.
Oh God, hello. What a surprise to see you.
How's it going?
Very well, my friend, very well. It's lovely to see you and your lovely crew of people that you've collected over your dedication of videoing this brilliant free venue of free speech. Hats off to you. I'm not taking my hat off on account of being A, cold, and B, displaying my hat hair. Hat hair never cool. So what's happened in the world? Lots of things, clearly. So we'll just focus on the most important ones, which is far right trying to bring down an American democracy, which is not much of a democracy in the first place, by the way, but it still pretends, the rich love to pretend it's a democracy, and we'll just go with that for the moment. I don't want to complicate this any more than it is. So you've got people like pseudo-atheist Steve, Tommy Robinson, their hero, Donald Trump. You may have heard of him. He's the man with the ton of fake suntan, a lie, and a hairstyle that clearly is also a lie, and barely wants to stay on his head, which is quite a bizarre choice of expression, shall we say. And what's this man done? Well, he's deliberately and willfully tried to bring an insurrection to the United States of America. It is absolutely diabolical behaviour from anyone but a sitting president of the United States of America, and all this done on innuendo of the idea that in the USA the election was a fraud. This is just hearsay. No proof has been presented. Not only was it presented, it hasn't been presented to any courts, but Republicans begging Trump to see that proof so that they can then legally overturn the elections in each county, each state. So Republicans have been begging Trump for this evidence. Trump hasn't even given his own supporters, as in senators, the evidence because he hasn't got any to give. So therefore, every time Trump rings them up and says, can you just chuck away 10,000 votes? They have to say, well, no, because clearly it's legal. I wish I could. I wish you were the president again of the United States of America. But I live in a democracy, I as in the senator, a Republican senator, who's clearly said to him, I can't do that, over a phone call, which he then released onto the media. And then that failed. So what's Trump left with? He'll never give up. Trump will never give. He doesn't understand that the number of votes is a reality. Even if he'd lost by a little bit, this same thing would have happened. So we'll see. So his last chance was to attack Pence, who was going to certify the votes on the 6th, which is, he has no legal power in that day. It purely is the handing over of the keys of democracy to the winner. That's all that is. It's a symbolic thing, and it's symbolic so that the opposition can see that it's a legitimate democracy functioning. So that's what all that day is. Trump, though, he has other ideas what all that's about. For him, that's going to be his last stand moment in reality. So he got all his supporters, told them to go out there and fight. Him and his Trump children as well were doing exactly the same thing. They were just saying, we're coming for you, Pence. They were using dangerous and threatening language to people armed and believe that guns are an absolute right. Where the left and centre, but left, think guns are terrible because of this exact reason. So Trump fueled his supporters for a day that's purely symbolic, with no legal power to do what Trump asked of Pence, which is to not certify the votes for the states. That didn't matter to Trump. This is, by the way, is what Hitler was saying to his generals. As the war was coming to the end of World War II, Hitler, a Nazi, far right, just like Trump, was saying to his generals, I want you to go out there and destroy that Russian army. And the generals are saying, my army was wiped out less than a year ago. There is no armies left anymore. Still Hitler, from his bunker, was screaming to the people in power, his own people, by the way, to get off their ass and do something. Reality is devoid of people like Trump and people like Hitler. They have no sense of what is reality. So what happened? Trump supporters raided the Senate. And in doing so, 4 or 5 people were killed. One of them being a police officer, which is utterly tragic, disgraceful, and totally and utterly predictable, by the way. Totally and utterly predictable. So there was no police. Some commentators, I don't think you need to be bleeding Einstein to point this out though, were saying if it being Black Lives supporters, if it being anti-fascist people, if it being people standing up for their human rights, which is what Black Lives Matter is, by the way. All they're doing is asking to be recognised as human beings in America. Same with the anti-fascists. If it had been them, they would have been fucking sniped from 3 miles away. Shot, gassed, electrocuted, beaten, pushed over, having their heads smashing against the ground. And they would have done that with fun and glorious rhetoric in their minds for how awesome it is that they can go out and kill people simply and hurt people simply because they're asking for human rights. But it's Trump supporters though, it's like fucking let them in. Just let them gather. It's not the police's fault, though obviously some police are capable and have quite big questions to answer, but it's the leaders of the police which just let all this happen and endangered their own forces. The people that the police, who are the leaders of the police, who are meant to be responsible for their own police as much as you can be, woefully irresponsible in their duty of making sure that their own officers were protected. Result was 1 dead. So they stormed the place, and now we have photographs of Nazis wearing fascist t-shirts and flags and shouting Nazi slogans in the Senate House, in that house, and photographs of them there now, because they think they've won and they think this is their victory. That's all they had to do. And the police had to defend themselves, and it was an absolute, it's all on camera, of course. And then there's and then while all this was happening, you got Trump Jr. videoing Donald Trump and his friends and family in a fucking tent with all TV cameras, watching all this take place, thinking it's brilliant. You got somebody just dancing away, what's she called? Kimberly? Just dancing away, thinking this horror and this attack against, this insurrection against America was just fucking champagne, cocaine times for them. So that's what they were doing, videoing that. It is absolutely and utterly disgraceful. So what's the end result of all this? Donald Trump is now going to be a hero even more in the Nazis and the far right in America. And democracy has now been, in America, has been sabotaged successfully for years to come. Because this ain't going to stop. There are now Republican senators just walking around going through airports, weirdly enough, they're all airports at the moment, who are now being attacked, Republican senators being attacked by these Trump supporters. So this is going to have no end to it. And by the way, loads of Republicans have come out and classed this as an absolutely disgraceful and utterly abhorrent action, which Donald Trump is now glorifying himself in. He's banned from Twitter and Facebook and what's that. And is that good? Yeah, when a sitting president, the most powerful in the world, man in the world, is asking for an insurrection through these forms of media, yes, you have to stand up and ban that person. This isn't Joe just hanging out on a street park corner, ranting at the world on his Twitter account or wherever, or behind his desk. This is the sitting president, so yes, you have to, those companies were right to absolutely ban this person. And to be honest with you, this is a sane action in a democracy when its leader is literally asking for it to be brought down, constantly tweeting to supporters how it's all a fraud. Again, no evidence. Don't need evidence though when you're Trump or Hitler to do these things. Are we wrapping up? Couple more minutes. So yes, this is where we are now. Pence is now the lead enemy of the Republicans, and this is now setting up the next 4 or 5 years for Biden, who I think is a terrible person, by the way. Just the only difference between Trump and Biden is one of them can't stop sounding like a far-right nutter, and the other is just capable of pulling back enough to not sound like a far-right nutter. But I mean, I've heard the private recordings of him talking to black communities about how much he totally doesn't care about their fight for black rights. I mean, he's just totally dismissive of them. And there are recordings out there of him, so he's just as bad. But hopefully I'm wrong. I mean, could be. Biden might be actually not the Nazi, not the far-right nutter that he proclaims to be in private. But we'll see about that. Fingers crossed that he actually does something on the environment and Black Lives Matter and human rights, and bringing the banks into line with reality, because they're just hell-bent on destroying the economy of the banks. And this Wall Street, of course, they don't give a damn and never have done. So to conclude, yes, Trump deliberately and purposefully tried to destroy America's democracy. And it's not much of a democracy, as I said already. And this is only just the start. As Trump said in his apology, he said, this is just the start of things to come. He's right. This ain't going to stop, and it's going to get worse. The more that this becomes real, as in Biden being president. So America, the people with all the guns, are now even more fueled and will be fueled to use those guns, which is why all guns need to be banned. Because it's mad, especially if you believe in a democracy. So I'd like to conclude on that. Thank you ever so much for videoing me. You're the brave, brilliant, wonderful human being that you are. My name is Dust. Check out my poems on poemsofdust.blogspot.com. I think that's right. Please correct me if I'm wrong. You're wonderful, thank you, and all your supporters, remember to wear masks, social distancing. This is a reality, and it's getting much worse because of horrific Boris Johnson's actions and lack of actions. Wear masks, thank you.